Aron is the director of sales over at Monday.com, has a lot of super interesting insights. He was actually the first one over on the sales team over there and helped to build it out with a team that's heavily focused on product. So we will toss it right over to you. You can dive right in. Let's get a little bit of background, and then let's just start to talk about your role and kind of kick things off there.
Awesome. Well, we only have 30 minutes, so I'll dive straight in, but I'll start this off with, if anybody has questions or topics that you're interested in, please feel free to interrupt me. I love to keep this as interactive as possible. So my name is Aron, and if you wonder, that weird last name that is pronounced as Vuijsje, a very Dutch last name. I started in Monday.com, or at the time it was Davies, in February in 2016. At the time, there were 16 employees and there was not a sales team yet. I started in the customer success team. I came from a sales background, very quickly realized that one, I was really missing sales, and two, I really believed that there was a huge opportunity to have a sales team inside of the company. To keep a very long story short, I went to the CTO and the CEO at the time, currently the co-CEOs, and I pitched them to start the sales team. They both came from a very much product and R&D related background. So they kind of had that image of the Wolf of Wall Street from sales. A lot of concerns around it's gonna, ruin the platform. It's gonna end up just making it right for some of the enterprise customers, but ruin it for everybody else. And kind of that unethical type of sales. So really what I did is explaining to them that there is also such a thing called value-based sales, and that it doesn't need to be aggressive, and that it actually can be based on creating a lot of value. And that the big difference of where we were at the time, because I do have to say the Monday, I would say from the beginning, is really built on customer success, product, and marketing. We had a very, very strong marketing team. We had an amazing customer success team, and still have, of course. And we had a very strong product, which of course really developed over time. So based off of that, we actually got to 10,000 customers already, even before we started the sales team, which also gave us a lot to work with. But the big difference between having people to actually manage and handhold kind of through that whole relationship is you get the capability of bringing companies on board instead of teams. And that's really what I got the opportunity to prove. I would also say a huge compliment to our leadership, because at the time, there wasn't really a real reason for them to say yes to me. They just saw somebody that was extremely motivated, and they did it in a very smart way. Pretty much what they told me is take 50% of your time focused on sales, take 50% of your time, continue the customer success, and prove to us that it's worth it. Within the first 3 months, I closed the biggest deal, and I brought more in than the whole team combined. So I think that proved the model, and that's kind of where the journey started. They started telling me, okay, start hiring people. So I first started hiring around to build the sales teams in Israel. And then after 2 years, they asked me to relocate to New York. I was there for 2 years, opened up the office there, and started the sales team there as well. And then about 2.5 years ago, I moved back to Israel, and I manage 5 teams here, 45 people on the sales side now as well.
Quick question for you. What did you think about in hiring those first hires? Was there certain types of people you were looking at, certain types of roles?
In the beginning, when we started it, it was like, because it was such a small company, like take into consideration, we had 16 people in the whole organization, and like I was the first salesperson. So it's something that probably a lot of you experience if you started in a smaller company, if you're still there now. If you're one of the first salesperson, you do everything. So there was no customer success, there was no SE, there was no SDR, there was no BDR, there was no account manager. So in the beginning, it was really, we did everything. And like the more that we grew as an organization, the more you start getting the luxury of specializing more in specific positions. So today there's tons of different positions out there. We have SDRs, BDRs, account executives, account managers, from the SMB sector to the mid-market to the enterprise. We work with dedicated success managers. We have sales engineers. So right now it's like a very mature and much larger organization. But at the time when we just started it, like we hired on potential. We didn't have the budgets or the revenue to like hire big shots with tons of experience. So we really looked for not experience, but really for potential. And maybe one thing that's interesting to add there as well, some of you might have seen it online coming up, but actually one of the things that we did is we created an academy. Today we have the academy across almost every single department, but the first one that we did was the sales academy. And the main reason for that, one of our headquarters is located in Israel, and there's a lot of high-tech companies in Israel, and there's not so many people that are working in the field. So it's very competitive in regards to finding the right people, and it's a relatively small pool. So one of the things that we thought is, why don't we expand the pool beyond of what we have today. So what we started doing is we ended up doing a 3 months program where myself and a lot of the other sales managers within the organization trained people with a lot of potential that came freshly out of university or that came from other roles that really wanted to get into tech sales. And that allows us today to really have a good combination of our normal hiring process, which today leans more towards experience, but also making sure that we have that opening to bring in people with a lot of potential that might have less experience.
Very cool.
Did it answer the question?
Yes, that was perfect. And other folks, feel free to think of some questions there on the side or things that you're thinking about, whether you're growing your company or kind of thinking about making some swaps internally. Feel free to.
Quick question here. You
Yeah.
mentioned the academy that you're using. Is that academy after they get hired, or is the academy something you use in order to bring people to your company?
Before, correct. So we obviously have a whole onboarding process as well for everybody that we hire. But the difference here, the hiring process normally, I would say takes maybe, in our case, we try to do it as quick as possible. Also, I would say usually it is between 2 weeks to a month. So you don't really have the chance to get to know people really well. And if you're taking somebody that comes fresh out of university that never had a sales role, and we're not looking for people that already know how to sell. We're looking for people that can quickly learn and that we can see these can be great salespeople later on. So it's a completely different process. We started off with 40 people. We actually were a bit overwhelmed because I think we got about 2,000 people signing up within 1 day. So that was a lot more than we initially expected. Out of those, we ended up choosing 40 people. From those 40 people, they started with us. And more than 50% of that got hired in the end inside of Monday. And our goal is also to get the other 50% hired. The main reason why we didn't hire everyone is because we didn't have so many open positions, but we're working very close with other organizations as well. And of course, for anyone here, if you're looking to hire, if you're interested, feel free to reach out after this as well. And also, if you have any questions after this, I'm more than happy to speak also, of course, after this and continue our conversations.
Hey, Aron, I have a quick question. So like, what do you do when you're in the process? Like you've hired someone, they've oversold their skill set, and what do you do then? Do you demote them or do you let them go? How do you do that?
So after we hired already, like you start through the process and you find out that the person that you hired didn't necessarily have the capabilities that they set themselves?
Yep.
So I think there's, first of all, obviously you will never, or I hope for some of you, maybe it is the case, but my assumption is nobody hires 100% right. So always those type of situations will come up, but there's a lot of ways of how you can try to prevent it. So like one of the big things that we do is we have a demo that we do throughout the process. And the demo is based on the Monday platform. So it's not something that you can learn for years and you're so comfortable with it. So you just say it out as a robot. It means you need to look into the product. You need to play with something that you're not that confident and used to, which really shows you very clearly what is somebody's experience, how strong are they, how do they know how to handle a sales cycle, because we're going through that whole kind of process in a mini structure. So that's one aspect, that the demo aspect really allows us to quickly understand how much experience somebody already has. Another thing that I really like to do in the interview process is not to ask what would you do, but what did you do? And very quickly, when you're in a conversation and you're asking about their previous experience, it's okay, wait, what specific deal are you speaking about? What exactly happened in this process? You very quickly will be able to identify if somebody truly is speaking about experience that they really did, or if somebody making something up to sound good according to what they want you to hear. So that's in regards to before the process even starts. That's where we try to make sure that we hire the right fits, because obviously nobody likes to let somebody go. Having that said, I'm a big believer in hiring quick, firing quick. What I mean with that is obviously not like just start firing everyone. We want to go through the process of making sure, did we do everything that we can to train them well? Did they get the support that they need? But in the end, it's not fun for either side if you're going through a very long process that doesn't work well. So if very early on in the process, you do see that it is that misfit, and that it's a misfit to such an extent that it's not able to overcome with training, I think it's important to make that decision as quick as possible for both sides. In general, my process is a quarter. So the first months that you see that something is going down, we'll have an overall conversation. Of course, it also depends on what happens before. The second month, it will be more of a serious verbal warning. And then the third month, if we see that it really continues to go wrong, then you start looking at a performance improvement plan. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
I've got a quick one, if you wouldn't mind. You're in a cool position of having done CS then sales. A lot of people do the other way around. But I'd be very interested to learn over time as you were doing CS, then moving to sales, how the PLG model changed, if it did at all, right? Because I talk to CROs and growth people all day, and it's an increasingly blurry middle ground in this free trial area, or this like 14-day trial of, is it support? Is it success? Is it an AE? And every company handles that landscape a little bit differently. And at Service Bell, I'm doing what you did, like all from demo to CS, everywhere in between. But it's very hard to also figure out, okay, how much of my time should I be spending doing CS, which is right in front of your face, hey, I need help, versus, being a closer. So curious to see how both you and the model potentially changed as you guys got bigger, and also had so much inbound that you probably couldn't even think how that changed your approach.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So first of all, I mean, the model changed very significantly, but I don't think that the change started from the move from customer success to sales. I think it's just the introduction of sales was a very different approach. So for example, when we just started, we actually had the capability of calling every customer the moment that they signed up. So really what we tried to do in the beginning phase is the moment that somebody signed up, we immediately gave them a call. How is everything going? How was your onboarding? Do you have any questions? And that allowed us to really evolve quickly as a platform. Obviously, the bigger that we got, that doesn't become possible anymore. And there's also a big difference between the approach that we had initially, which was really as a customer success team, making sure that the customer got what they want. And then as a sales team, where still it is making sure what the customer needs, but also obviously focusing on how can we grow throughout the organization? How can we make the connections? Ensure the much more proactive approach. So I would say in the beginning, in the customer success side, the overall mission stayed the same. The mission has always been, how can we make sure that we create value for our customers? How can we help them build out their workflows in the best and most efficient way in the Monday.com platform? The difference is the approach. We started much more coming from a sales approach. So really talking to the right people, smart in choosing your segment, who are you going to reach out to, looking more at titles, looking at product-led growth, looking at a lot of indicators inside of the platform. So we work with an amazing team that allows us and gives us the opportunity to work with different types of algorithms. So for example, one algorithm is about customer health. I see that Trey actually just joined us, who for a very long time was one of our top leaders in the customer success team. So I'm sure that he can speak even more about that specific aspect. But it really allows us to know where to focus. So for the customer success team, it gave them a good understanding of what accounts are at risk of churning. So let's work with them. Where are the problems within that account? And then for sales, it's another algorithm, which is which accounts show the most likelihood for conversion and which accounts have the most likelihood for a good opportunity, right? Because in the end, the bigger you become, you need to start filtering, and you say certain opportunities are not handled by the sales team. And then some of the opportunities go to the SMB team, some go to the mid-market team, some go to the enterprise team. So that made a very big difference. But I wouldn't say that it was immediately with the creation of sales, but the start of sales really started focusing on a much more proactive approach. Did that answer your question?
Totally.
Awesome. I see Andrew. Do you want to hop up here? And then I think there's two other hands raised, but I saw Andrew had his question in the chat. Maybe you can ask it live.
Yeah, sure. I'm interested, we chatting to lots of people who are choosing between PLG and SLG, or the kind of the hybrid approach and how to prioritize things first. Monday obviously was entering a pretty busy marketplace. And how much do you think that your product-led approach that then you've now added sales on top of was possible and successful because you're entering a really busy marketplace where the users already were using similar tools? Like, was a lot of your adoption coming from other similar tools, and therefore users were educated and needed much less manual hand-holding, and that was part of that rise, versus people who are selling new solutions into new problems, which might need more education and a heavier sales process, and that's what you saw as you go up market a bit?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And also this really changed a lot over time. So if you're looking at the beginning, like when I started in 2016, like the product had 3 different columns. Like today, I believe we have 25 different columns that allows you to build out any type of workflow. So when we started, it really came more from an aspect. Our CEO comes from Wix. It actually started the idea in Wix of having a tool that really helps with communication. And from there on, it significantly started moving. So from communication, it came more, hey, actually, you can use this for tasks. Then you kind of got into project management atmosphere. And that's actually also pretty recent. Like if you're looking 5-10 years back, it was really project managers that were using it for project managers, where today everybody in the organization is using it. So there was also this big kind of explosion of all of a sudden everybody started using it. Then from there on, we started learning that our customers were using the platform for so much more than just project management. They were using it as a CRM, they were using it for marketing, they were using it as a document repository. And that's kind of where the term work operating system, work OS, came from. Very similar to Apple, right? It's kind of a store that allows you to get anything that you really want. And that's what the Monday platform is today. The reason why we wouldn't call the project management platform is not because we don't do that. It's really where we started from. It's our bread and butter, and tons of organizations are using it. But today, the use cases are endless. We have people using it for CRM, we have people using it for marketing, we have people using it for project management. So that significantly expands it. Now, if you really look at the beginning days, like where did most of the people come from? Our biggest, I would say, like competitor, I don't know if you really call it a competitor or not, but it was Excel, it was paperwork, it was like writing on boards. And especially if you're looking at the other teams that we handle, not like the project managers that are using very heavy systems, but really like the people throughout of the organization that are all involved in these projects. So one really big benefit that we had is we're a very user-friendly platform. And a testament to that is 70% of our customer base is actually not from the tech industry. So that allows us to pull everybody in the company in and really creating that one source of truth. Another big strength that we have is the flexibility. Because of all of those columns that I spoke about, we can really build out the solution that you want versus adjust you to the platform that we give. And having that flexibility really allows us to work with any type of department and build out any type of workflow that's relevant for our customers. So today we're kind of on all the fields. And then over the last, I would say about year, we started releasing different products as well. And that allows us to also compete in different shapes. So for now you use Monday as a CRM. So that allows us to compete in that space. You use Monday as a marketing tool. So it allows us to compete in that space. Use Monday as a software development tool. So it allows us to compete in that space. So it really allows us to go extremely broad and work with so many different tools. So it started off really with mostly the people that didn't have anything. They were using paperwork, they were using project management. We very quickly understood that people use the system for so much more than what we could ever dream of. And that's what ended into the product that we have today. I think something that the company does really well is taking feedback. We have tons of different incoming streams of feedback from the sales team in regards to what we call the touch feedback, from the customer success team, which we aggregate all through Zendesk, from the teams itself, from having calls with our customers. And I really would say like the platform that we have today, in my opinion, like the biggest reason why it's so strong is because we listen very well to our clients of what are their needs and how can we consistently keep on optimizing it and making it easier for our customers. Did that answer the question?
Cool, super helpful, thanks. And I can see why you moved into sales.
Let's toss it over to Carl. I know you've had your hand up for quite a bit. Thanks for the patience.
Oh, my pleasure. My question to you, Aron, is how was the process or what was the pushback or process, I guess is the best way to say it, moving from that feature led to the value-based selling? How did that go for you? Any sort of suggestions on pitfalls or roadblocks that you might encounter?
Yeah, I think it's a really, really good question. And that kind of gives us back to, again, going to a company that is very much coming from kind of that product focused background. We A/B test everything, including our own sales team. So the first thing that we did in the early phases, we started selling. I would say in the very beginning, it was more of a transactional sell, but very quickly we saw like we want to move much more to that value-based sell. So my focus was getting everybody in the team ready to understand how do you focus on value. A value-based sell has nothing to do with features. It has to do with the value that those features bring. You might mention how those features help to get those value, but really the bottom line is what is the value from it? Another thing that we did is we actually tested our salespeople against the robots to see where do we make the biggest impact. And what we started seeing is that the sales team does make a very big impact, but it really starts around at the time that was about the 50 user mark. And the biggest impact that we make is they grow quicker, they're healthier customers, they churn slower, but the beginning part, we didn't make such a big impact on. So one of the things that we were looking at is how can we drive behavior towards the direction that we know is best for the company. So for example, one of the results that came from that A/B test is that we call it orange bucket, green bucket, which kind of means if you have a deal that's under a certain deal size, you can't claim it yet towards your targets. But once it moves from orange bucket to green bucket, so it hits that certain number, it can go towards your targets. What that allowed us to do is to make sure that our team is focusing on those deals where we make the biggest impact and not on the deals where the self-service works really well. So that also allowed us to kind of start filtering out, and we still do that through the day. Like those algorithms allow us to say, okay, these are the relevant leads to send over to our team. And then also depending on what the type of lead it is, which specific group or team do we want to send it to.
Awesome.
Did that answer the question?
I think there's a lot more, but yes, that's helpful for today. Thank you.
I'm more than happy to dive deeper in other topics. Any further questions?
We'll connect everybody. Just let me know if you need some intros or find each other on LinkedIn too.
Awesome.
Aditya and then Sarah.
Hey Aaron, thank you so much for sharing all the detailed answers. I have a follow-up question based on Aaron's Andrew's question. That so like Monday.com has so many products, right? How do you identify the right matrix where you start upselling other products? Because if I go through the kind of products you guys offer, most of the companies would require or use those services, right? So how do you transition in terms of upselling? That is one. On top of that, that transition, does that happen through the sales team or product marketing team? Like how does that work?
The upselling aspect, you mean?
Yeah, upselling, yeah.
So it's a combination of both, right? Because there's different parts in the platform that allows to create an upsell without even somebody being involved. So for example, you click on a specific feature, it's an enterprise feature, you really want to use it, so you automatically move to the enterprise plan. That's kind of what you see on the smaller plans. And they have the sales focus. I think personally, one of the things that's most important to me and what I really work closely on with my team, don't focus on something until you show the customer that they can get what they need. Right? One of the big mistakes a lot of people make is on the first call, somebody says, hey, I want to use the platform for A, B, and C. And your answer is, awesome, we can do that. If that works, is there somebody else in the company that could be relevant for? Would you be able to introduce me to person X? It's totally fine to ask those questions, but you ask them when you build a relationship. You ask them when you proved and earned the right to ask those questions. And the best way to do that is asking questions to your customer. So I think the first part of it is really understanding what did they came to you for, or what do they initially want to utilize the platform for? Once I showed that, doesn't mean that you already made the sale, but it means that they confirm, hey, I see myself using it with this specific use case. That's the point that I'm looking at expansion, right? Because now they're actually very open to start having that conversation. If it's an existing customer that is already using the platform for a long while, and that's again kind of connects really well with that product-led growth, we have a lot of things that we can already see into our business intelligence tool, right? So I will look in an account and I'll check, hey, do I see an account that has 100 people from marketing and one person from the IT team? I want to talk to that person from the IT team because that's probably going to be my in to actually bring in another department. If it's a customer that kind of stays stagnant, that doesn't... Sorry, I think there was a question coming up. Or there was an accidental unmute. I think it was an accidental unmute. What was it? The last part that I said, the last thing, if it's a stagnant customer, meaning you know that there is no growth coming or you expect that there's no growth coming in the next few months. One of the techniques that I really like to do, and especially if you believe in your platform, give them a proof of concept. Like we have the ability to do it really quickly, right? So in a month, most of our customers, we can pretty much show them exactly what they want to see. So I'll do something as going to a customer that already has a good experience in a specific use case and tell them, hey, I can give you that same experience in this department. And I'm so confident about it that I'm happy to work with you for the next 30 days. And only after that, we need to make a decision, which again, really allows you to pull a lot more people in. So those are some of the techniques that we use.
How do you control churn in this case? The long-term customers who are not really in the platform.
How do you control churn? Was that the question?
I mean, how do you, recognize that some customers are churning, and are there steps you take to, get them engaged with the platform?
Absolutely. So I think the first thing is, again, measuring everything. Like you should 100% know exactly how many new customers do you have, how many customers churn, build inside of your product the capability to let your customers give you the reasons, follow up with the customers to understand why did they actually churn, because that's what's going to allow you to prevent it in the future. Have that conversation with them. You'll be surprised how many might come up with a reason that the platform can do, but they just didn't know that it was a possibility. And you'll be surprised about how many good advices and feedback you get from your customers that you can implement later on. So I think that's a really big aspect of it. Then there's two parts. One of the parts is within the platform, right? Making sure that the platform allows to create new value propositions, both for existing and new customers, by pointing them towards features that can really benefit from them. And then again, having a very strong customer success team that works closely with our customers. And similar to the sales position when I was in the CS, it was like one person doing everything. Today, we have so many different roles. So you have like implementation consultants who are experts on the implementation part. Then you have the dedicated success managers that work with our bigger customers. Then you have our success team that focused on the smaller customers. In the end, you can't spend an insane amount of time with all of them. We all would want to, but unfortunately, that's not possible. So then you're looking at ways of how you can work more efficient. So somebody that works with smaller accounts will have a much bigger portfolio, but still works on a lot of triggers and utilizes the platform a lot more. And then somebody that works with our biggest customers, that will be a much more face-to-face conversation, meeting in person, and making sure that we can help everybody throughout. So I would say the biggest part of how we look at that is by measuring it, by really diving deep into why is this happening, speaking with our customers, speaking with our customer success team, speaking with our sales team. And based on that, deciding whether this is worth to make a change, whether this means that we need to add something else, or of course, in any organization, you know, you're going to see some customers churn. That's a normal part of the process. But you do want to make sure that that doesn't get out of hand. And especially from a sales side, it's kind of running in sink sand, right? Like if you're bleeding from the bottom, then it doesn't matter how much you add because you're bleeding half of it away again. So it's just as important to make sure that you're not losing customers and that you have a significant churn at this, making sure that you're bringing in new customer and maintaining your customers, if not more important, because in the end, if you're losing all of your customers, like, you know, your company is kind of going to a completely wrong direction. So it's extremely important to make sure that you have happy customers. It's going to have a really big impact also on your new customers. So these are some of the ways that we do it.
Leaky bucket. All right, Sarah, let's get you in there and then we'll kind of wrap up with that one.
Thanks, Breezy. So I had two questions if there's time. One, you mentioned that early days you were calling everybody at the time that they signed up. Do you feel like looking back that was the right call to make, and what did you learn from it? And then separately, you also mentioned that CS and sales feedback was really critical to building out the product and the features that needed to be built in the product. What did you learn through that process of integrating sales feedback for processes that you felt like we could get the feedback to product, but you weren't needing to be involved in every meeting, kind of pulled off the phones?
Yeah, so I'll remind me of the first question.
You called everybody as soon as they signed up.
Yeah, I think that I would do it again. If I was in the same place right now, I would do the same thing again, because it just gives you so much value, especially when it's a new product, especially when it's a small team, especially when you have a relatively small group of client facing. Getting that feedback from the customers is so important. Hopping on that call and having somebody say, hey, like this was super unclear for me, like I didn't know what to do here, can mean the difference of actually building an experience inside of the product for all of the other customers that is much better. So I definitely would do that again. And the truth is, if we had the capability of doing it today, I probably would still do it. Just in the end, you always need to prioritize, and the bigger it gets, like there's a lot of good, and luckily we're in a position that there's a lot of things that we can do well, but we need to look at what's going to make the biggest impact. And in the end, it would make the biggest impact for us to call all of our customers. So we do need to start looking at how can we divide it according to how big our team is. In regards to the second question, I don't really think that there was anything new. The way that when we had our customer success team, we already worked very much like that as an organization. We just continued that process from the sales team. We also work very closely between customer success and sales. I would say the biggest difference is we are able to get feedback that you normally won't get. When you dive really deep into the organization and you start talking to all of the different decision makers in the company, from 10 to 50,000 people, you're going to get very different feedback than when you're talking to people that have 10 to 50 people within the organization. So it just, again, allows us to really take that feedback. And another thing based on that I really recommend is segment your feedback, right? So we got feedback from our largest customers, we got feedback from our smaller customers, and we're looking at it also in the use case of that specific segment, so that when we implement it, that we can make sure that we implement the right things. One way that we do that is gradual discovery. If you have a customer, especially if it's no touch, right, with a salesperson in front of it, it's a lot easier because we have the ability to talk, we can do a demonstration. You don't have all of that luxury when it just comes to the platform. So if you give everybody immediately access to everything that the platform can do, people tend to freak out, like it's too difficult, and they leave. So like having that kind of gradual experience of, hey, slowly starting, but throughout the process, learning more and more how you can enhance the capabilities while still using a very user-friendly workflow is something that I would also say is very, very crucial.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, judging from all the questions that we had, all the big thank yous, and I have so many questions coming up in the chat. Clearly, this was a super helpful conversation for a lot of folks. So thanks so much for coming on. Thanks everybody for joining. We will have a recording of this, so we'll toss that up on YouTube. Not going to gate anything. Everybody can access it. And let's continue the conversation in the Slack Connect channel for those of you in there, and anyone who wants to join, just let me know.
Awesome.
Thanks,
It was
Aron.
great meeting everyone. And if there was any questions I didn't answer, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or email or any other way.
Awesome.
Aron at
All right.
Monday, by the way. Have a
Perfect.
great day, everyone.
Bye, everyone.